Because when I was younger, I was definitely around the same age, like 10, 11, 12. Yeah, probably around like 10 or 11. When I remember I actually have journal entries of me saying like, I need to get on a diet. And like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to cut out bread. I'm going to start running every day. Like all the things. And it's just because I was, seeing all the, you go through the checkout at the grocery and it's like, lose 10 pounds in 10 days. And here's the latest diet, whatever. Yeah. And thinking that was normal. And it's really sad now to look back and be like, you just had like a regular girl physique, it's just whatever.
Welcome back to another episode of Smash Oranges. If you have not done so already, please give us a like and subscribe down below. It helps us bring you fresh new content every week and keep our community growing.
All right, today we're diving into a bit of a topic that can be a little bit controversial. I feel like sometimes I've pitched it that way, but today it truly is a little bit controversial. We've touched on the subject slightly before, but we're going to talk a little bit deeper about it today. And that is the whole body positivity / body neutrality movement and how we view that as mothers and how it also trickles down to our children. And we talked a little bit on this in another episode where we discussed kind of like our postpartum bodies and how people commenting on them, had quite the impact on us. But today we're going to talk about, just go a little, like I said, go a little bit deeper on it. So first to start, we wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between body positivity and body neutrality. Because I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of hashtags over the years where body positivity has been it's become very trendy to use that hashtag. And especially as fitness professionals, both you and I think we're probably a little bit more in the sphere of seeing that sometimes. At least for myself, a couple of years ago, it was very much, like Fitspo, everyone's getting super lean, everyone's doing macros and all this sort of stuff. And then I started to shift and see different content that was more like away from that and more into like the body acceptance and body love sort of stuff. And this is a really interesting topic. I am actually very passionate about this. This is something that I kind of did a deep dive in personally, like I mentioned a couple of years ago. So a little bit of backstory. Okay, so back in like 2018, 19, 20, 2018,
we're probably.
I was an online fitness coach. And so I coached clients online. We did some macro coaching, did personal training, all that jazz. Yeah. And what I started to notice is clients were really struggling with body image. And especially I started to notice people kind of leaning more into restrictive eating and restrictive lifestyles, where it started to kind of backpedal what they were trying to do. They thought they were trying to love their bodies and accept and, do the healthy thing. Yeah. But oftentimes it would just totally flip-flop. Yeah. And they would end up with disordered eating habits. And so then I started to think, you know what, I think there's a little bit more to this that we have to address. And personally, I know I had experienced a lot of that in my life as well. And this is something that I would like to hear more of your side of as well. But just the verbiage that was used a lot growing up around our bodies and around what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating, that really had quite a big impact on me. Yeah. And so when I started coaching, all that sort of started coming back and started feeling like a little triggering, because I was like, how do I coach people through this if I myself have a lot to uncover on it? And so that's when the whole like body positivity, body neutrality world kind of started to creep up in my algorithm, where it's like, what is this and how can we implement it so that, we can still be quote unquote healthy, but still, accept our bodies and yada yada. So I've got it's like a social class right now. Okay, I've got some history for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I'm listening.
I want to know first, before I even dive into it, do you know any of the history behind the body positivity movement?
No.
Okay, because a lot of people think it's just, like I said, a hashtag, but it's got origins from the early 1960s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did not know this.
Yes. So it's a whole
pre-social media.
Yes, pre-social media. All newspapers, word of mouth. And, it even kind of started a little bit earlier than that, but it really started to take off in the 1960s.
Okay.
And it's bred in the basically misogyny and racism that was really hardcore during that time. And during that time, there was like the women's rights movement starting to happen and the Black civil rights movements that are happening as well. And so it was during that time that the body positivity started to surface as a way to combat those things. Because, pre-1960s, there was the British and the French colonialism, and the British and the French would try to kind of find distinction between like white bodies and Black bodies, so like slave bodies and stuff. And typically speaking, Black bodies are just a bit of a different shape, and they tended to be a little bit larger than like a white colonial bodies, just genetics. Anyways, so they would try to find differentiations and categorize like fatness as like sluggishness, as laziness, and as like everything bad. Like that was Black, that was, and now into the 1960s to expand into like the queer community as well. So like anything that was in those marginalized communities was bad. So if you had a larger body, bad, and it was labeled as such, right? And so it's really interesting because there's actually this whole like, what's it called? Oh shoot, I've totally blanked on what it is. Manifesto. There's a whole fat activism manifesto that was written.
Okay.
With the whole intent basically to say like people in larger bodies deserve equal rights. They deserve to be treated as such.
Yeah.
We just need to start
minimal,
we need to make sure that we're not minimalizing and marginalizing people in larger bodies just because of the shape of their body.
Interesting.
So if you go right down to the seed of body positivity, it's meant to be a fat liberation, Black liberation, like Black freedoms, LGBTQ plus freedoms and rights movement. Yeah. And so it's been interesting to watch as social media, like you mentioned, has kind of taken this on. It's continued to kind of marginalize those bodies. Yeah. Because now we've shifted to a lot of time the hashtag is used with like white bodies that they could be larger, but they're larger in like the right way, quote unquote. So what
do you mean by that? Larger in the right way?
Good question.
I'm very interested what that means.
So if you think about like ads nowadays, right? If there's like a curvy line, or if we've got like plus size models, a lot of the time they are larger bodies, but they're larger like in still kind of like an appealing shape, like very much like, we still have a waist and we still, we have got like the hourglass shape, but you're just larger. Yeah. And so a lot of the times, and we're still seeing that change like a little bit. Like there are brands that are actively trying to change the terms of that. However, it's still very much like, we've kind of capitalized on the body positivity movement. Yeah. And so even white, thinner people specifically will be like, like I still have stretch marks. I've still gained like 15 pounds and it's making me uncomfortable, that sort of thing. And so people don't realize, but it's very steeped in just the social injustice movement, because there's a lot of people that still feel very marginalized by this movement.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Right?
I would say that I do think that society does still marginalize people who are larger. Yeah.
And there's a whole phrase for it. It's called fat phobia.
Interesting.
Right? It's literally like you internally realize that if you see somebody larger, you think that they're unhealthy, you think that they're lazy, you think they're not doing what they need to be doing. And then by virtue of that, a lot of the times when people in larger bodies go to like, let's say a medical clinic, that's often one of the first things that a clinician will say or a physician will say is, well, have you thought about losing weight? Or they're prescribed something to help with their weight and things like that. Whereas sometimes in a thinner body, it might be that we look into other things, like we get some blood work done. And so it's interesting because, basically there's just this fear of fatness. And by principle, people believe that thinness equals health and wealth. And
interesting.
a trend of like working harder and things like that. And so it's very interesting because you can see where the origins are, and it's so deeply ingrained that we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And especially as two white women talking about it, it's like, whew, it kind of sits a little heavy because we obviously can't speak to that experience in the same way, right? And so it is something that we want to like almost tread delicately on, but also just recognize for our listeners and our audience that it's important to recognize the history of it and to understand the impact that it has, because I think we can still say, we love our body in every shape and size, but we also have to recognize the impact of our thoughts on other people, like what we're thinking about other people and their different bodies, shapes, and sizes. Right. So anyways, that's our long kind of, not disclaimer, but little history lesson as to why the body positivity movement is what it is.
That's interesting. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
I just kind of thought that like it was a movement that was like, you should love your body no matter what size it is.
Well, and so this is the thing. This is where I struggle, because knowing the history of it and knowing that myself as a like thinner white woman with the privilege of that can only say so much. But I would think that we all do still have the right to say, like, we can love our bodies in whatever shape and size. Like, I don't think that belief itself belongs to any sort of movement. If that makes sense. The origin of it and like the purpose behind it can still belong to like the whole origin story, the history behind it. But since this is like a motherhood podcast, I would just extrapolate to say, like, this is just why we're discussing it, is to be able to talk about the difference between body positivity and body neutrality, because there is a lot of identity just for every person who has a body, right, in the way that they look and the way that other people perceive them. And so, it was just something that I wanted to bring up, because going back to my own origin story of how this kind of came about, this is what eventually led me to more of the body neutrality standpoint. And so I want to ask, have you heard about body neutrality?
I mean, I've not heard that term exactly, but upon reading our notes going into today's show, I have heard about like the concept of it being that like, I'm just going to let you take it away. You go crazy.
Okay, we got this. We'll get into more of like a discussion on it afterwards, because I think we can all relate, but we maybe don't understand like
the terms. And, so let's just get clear on that, and then we'll dive in further.
To get clear, body neutrality is much more of a recent shift that's kind of happened. It's less about like loving your body at every shape and size, and more of an acceptance standpoint.
Right.
So a lot of it comes down to understanding like what our bodies are capable of. And this is where I really resonate with it now as a mother is, our bodies have probably been through a lot, and most likely than not look different than how we looked pre-baby. And so to be able to recognize like, holy moly, like our bodies created a whole person. It's a miracle that I was able to do that, and I'm still standing in one piece, more or less.
More or less. Some days more than others.
Pee a little bit when I laugh, but no, I'm just kidding.
But also not.
I'm pregnant though. I'm working on it. Just that our bodies go through a lot, and it's okay to not have like super positive moments with your body, but you can kind of take a step back and say like, I can recognize what my body has done, and I appreciate it for that. And so when I was working with my clients, this was a big step towards what you could argue is a body positive standpoint. Was, okay, if you're coming from a long history of I hate my body, I'm going to do everything I can to change it, I look gross, yada yada, then the first thing you can do is to start working bit by bit on having more of a neutral stance when you look at yourself.
Right.
And it takes a lot of work to get there. And it's not a place where you like arrive and stay there. It's pretty much a whole long lifestyle, right? It's gonna be something that you constantly have to work on. But I found it very liberating and very empowering to start seeing myself as somebody who can accomplish rather than just like a body or a trophy for people to look at. Side note, Yes, I did recently cut my hair. I kind of see this as a bit of an extension for me personally, in just like accepting what I look like in general and being okay with people thinking what they're going to think when they look at me.
Yeah.
Because when I decided I was going to cut my hair again, I was like, oh, people are going to have opinions, and I might look to some people like less feminine, or they're going to be like, oh, but I miss your long hair. And it happens in conversations sometimes. Like, they're like, oh, your hair, ... I'm like, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. There's no like follow-up compliment. There's no follow-up like question or anything. It's just, I'm like, whatever. So it's been a bit of a practice. And kind of, like I said, that extension of my body is going to do its thing, and I'm going to make choices for me.
Yeah.
And people are going to have their opinions.
I also think
it's going to be whatever. And I have to kind of embrace it for myself.
Yeah.
You know?
I think people also don't like change.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, when people see that you've, like, made a pretty dramatic change to your hair, and, like, I feel like this haircut, like, changes the whole shape of your face. It's
totally.
It's, like, kind of like, whoa. Sarah,
you're going through something?
You look different. And that's strange to me.
So true.
And but now that I've like seen you like a good handful of times, like, because when I first saw it, I was like a shock to my system. I was like, whoa, that's so different. And like the first like day after you did it too, I kept on being like, oh yeah, her hair's not there. Oh yeah, her hair's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
But now it just like looks normal to me now.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? And you can extrapolate that again back to our bodies. Like, you know, say you do gain like 30 or 40 pounds, and people are like, oh, but like, are you going to try to lose the weight quickly? Like, especially when we talk about bounce back culture, which we will get into.
Yeah.
Because I really want to deep dive into that in a couple minutes here. But people will have their opinions on that, right? Like, oh, but you looked so much better before. Like, make sure that you can get back to it, that sort of thing. And that kind of pressure, especially on moms, since we're mom talk today, is tremendous and really demoralizing, honestly. When you're just trying to like live your life, and you know people are gonna say things, and you're like,
or like get through postpartum depression, or like you're not sleeping, and like, why is it get back to your pre-baby body?
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Ooh. Yeah, it really is nuts. And again, that's when it can help to kind of reel yourself back in and be like, okay, remember what my body has been through? Amazing. If you haven't given birth to a baby, you have no opinion. Like, you shouldn't have, anyways, you shouldn't have an opinion on my body to begin with. Like, you can, but keep it to yourself. But that's not what it's about, right? Like, I'm not here to be glorified by what you think is appropriate or good looking. Anyways, so that's a little bit of the differentiation between body positivity and body neutrality. So now we can kind of deep dive into bounce back a little bit, because we did, like I said, mention this in a previous episode. But where did you feel like most of the bounce back pressure came from?
Ooh, I'm gonna say largely from social media. I think for me,
same. Yeah.
Like, if I'm being totally honest, like the social media, I'd say is like 80% of it. Yeah. And then like another 10% is probably just like conversations I've had with other moms. Honestly.
What in those conversations gave you pressure or made you feel uncomfortable?
I mean, I think like I know a good handful of girls that like did bounce back, or like in my brain it like looks like they've bounced back, you know, like I don't know what they're feeling about that, but in my brain I'm like, yeah, you look exactly like you did before you had a baby. And like it like occurred to me that they like lost the baby weight a lot quicker than I did. You know? Yeah, and so just that, like, kind of like, oh, like, if she's kind of back to how she looked, like, I feel like I should be back there, too.
Right.
You know, even if that wasn't ever, like, said verbally, it's kind of just, like, my own observations. Of, like, oh, like, she looks really great. Like, I wish I looked really great, you know?
Like, the standard almost changes. It's like, oh, if it's possible for her, then it should be possible for me.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think...
Yeah, and also just, like, pre-context, like, that's just, like, my perception of it, right? Like, if you were to go and talk to, like, I don't know, any one of those number of friends who, like, seem to have bounced back quicker or whatever, she might say the exact same shit I just said. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, like, how I'm interpreting other women around me, right? It has nothing really to do with them.
Right.
for their experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I've felt this, I wouldn't say more, but I've definitely been more attuned to how I'm feeling this second time being pregnant and seeing social media.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, I feel like everyone's kind of gotten pregnant around the same time. And at first it was triggering because at the very beginning of the second pregnancy, I was feeling like crap. And I was also seeing all these like fitfluencers who were like, I'm pregnant, how glorious. I'm going to keep doing the same thing that I've been doing. And I'm like, maintain my body shape as long as possible. I'm going to stay as active as possible.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? Again, that same feeling like, if she can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
Or if she looks that great postpartum, then why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And it's really sad because I think in our heads, before it happens, like you think, duh, like, of course. Especially, like I said, as fitness professionals, I think in our heads, we assume it's going to just be a natural flow for us. Like, oh, we love fitness. We love moving our bodies. It's going to feel so natural to just integrate that while in growing a baby.
Yeah.
But the reality is you don't know what your pregnancy experience is going to be like. You might be down in the trenches the whole 9 months and physically unable to move and unable to eat what you want to eat, all the things. And so I think it starts there. You know,
I mean, some of it. I'm just like, as you're saying that, so just kind of like, I'm not pregnant yet.
Yeah.
And don't plan to be anytime in the like next 6 months at least. But based on my experience with my first pregnancy, so like, I feel like once I got pregnant, kind of around that, like, honestly, like as soon as I got pregnant, I feel like my fitness, like how active I was being, decreased. And I think it's caused me a lot of like body issues after pregnancy. So like, like when I get pregnant again, and even like right now, I feel like I'm trying to like fix issues in my body that are like instabilities or like back pain or like stuff that's like not like still not firing or whatever. So that when I go into that second pregnancy, it's just like maintaining kind of like the mobility functions of my body. Like, I don't feel like I need to go be like a CrossFit athlete now, my second pregnancy, but I do regret not training for childbirth.
Yeah.
You know?
Same. I'm actually currently in that boat because I don't think I took my postpartum recovery with the mindset of eventually I'm going to get pregnant again.
Right.
I didn't take that seriously enough, thinking like, you know, because before my first pregnancy, I was active every day. My mobility was, you know, great and yada, yada. And my stamina was great. So I was like, perfect, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And even if I like took a couple weeks off before birth, which I did, Fair enough. I was fine.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like I almost have to play catch up. But like, how do you catch up when you're building a baby, because there's only so much you can do to like build back the muscle mass and,
exactly,
you know, that sort of stuff. And so, so this again comes back to where I have to practice my body neutrality in terms of like, okay, even if I'm not approaching childbirth with the same physical capacity as what I did before, I'm still addressing the fact that bodies are meant to do this. Yeah. My body is amazing for providing what it needs to grow my baby. Yeah. I noticed I actually went to the gym yesterday and I was trying not to hyperfixate on the fact that I just look like my legs look different. I'm just like, okay, we're not going to stare at ourselves in the mirror. Yeah. And so I kind of want to ask if the body neutrality like statement or phrasing feels like pressure or if it feels helpful.
I think for me it feels helpful, because I feel like going from being like, I don't like what I look like, to I just love my body feels like just an inauthentic jump for me.
It's huge.
Versus being like, oh, okay, my boobs are 3 cup sizes bigger now, even though I'm done breastfeeding. I just have to come to terms with that. Yeah. You know, like I don't have to be like, I can still like miss my perky boobs, but like, you know, like just coming to the term, like, okay, cool, they are what they are now, you know? Yeah, so I definitely feel like body neutrality feels a little bit more like permission to like start any sort of movement in a different direction. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like the jump from being just like blah to like, I'm so in love with my body. It just like feels like inauthentic to me anyways. And it doesn't feel like achievable either. Like the jump is just too big, you know?
Well, when we're supposed to feel safe in our bodies, when you're trying to like force a statement like that, that's not promoting the feeling of safety within ourselves.
No.
Like safety or trust. Like, I love who I am. Yada, yada, butterflies and rainbows.
Yeah.
You have to work on that. And so that's where the whole, like, that's why it's a whole step-by-step system with the whole body neutrality. And so when I was looking at myself in the mirror at the gym, I wasn't just like, oh, but it's okay, my thighs look amazing. And to some person, like, they might have been like, oh my gosh, you do look amazing. That's fine. Again, you can think what you're going to think. But to me, I was applauding myself because I was there working out.
Right.
Like, heck yeah, I stayed after my shift and I'm doing the movement. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And again, second pregnancy, like, hallelujah, look at me go.
Yeah.
I'm doing the thing. And like, I know that fitness and health are something that are important to me. And so I'm still trying to implement that. And I'm not equating my body size with fitness and health.
Right.
You know?
Because I don't think they're equated.
No, 100% not. No. And it's amazing too, going back to the whole fat phobia thing and like people going to the doctors. If we were to take actual health markers of people in larger bodies, like it's not like clear cut. It's not like, oh, once you have this amount of, you know, if you're this weight or whatever.
Well, the funny thing about weight too is like, so right now I'm probably like, I haven't stepped on the scale this week, so I actually don't know. But I feel like I'm probably within like 5-ish pounds of where I was pre-pregnancy. Wow. So like, yay me, woohoo, whatever. It doesn't really mean anything though, because muscle and fat weigh different amounts, right? And so like even when I do hit the like pre-baby weight or whatever, I can guarantee you my body composition is still completely different from what it was because my leg, like I can still tell you, like my legs are not nearly as strong as they were pre-baby, like pre-pregnancy, whatever. Like my muscles atrophied so much. And like, so I feel like, yeah, I might be the same weight as I was pre-baby, but my body comp's different. Like I still probably have a higher fat mass and a lower muscle ratio.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because it is still astounding to me how many people equate like actual, like the weight on the scale with being better or worse. It's like,
well, and even so, like too, like I've never been tested for this, but I would put money that I have incredibly dense bone. Because I've never broken anything. Nobody in my family's ever broken anything. And like, I think Arden has really dense bone as well because like he's not a huge kid, but he's heavy.
He is heavy.
He's really heavy, you know? And so like, even like when I graduated high school and was like in kind of like the peak of my athletic ability or whatever, like I was like 143 pounds.
Yeah.
But like somebody that was like the exact same height, exact same like body measurements as me could have been like 135, you know? Like bone weighs something too, and not everybody's bones weigh the same amount.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this is something that I talk about when I'm working at the gym. It's like, if you are going to worry about body composition, like fat versus muscle versus water weight versus bone density, yada, yada, keep in mind that muscle takes up less space.
Yep.
Fat takes up more space. So as you focus on like muscle building and stuff like that, you could be gaining weight by virtue of gaining more muscle. But it is also taking up less space. So you might notice that your body starts to change the way it looks and the way that your clothes fit.
So you might gain weight, but lose inches.
Right. And so just across the board, I just say like, just ignore the weight on the scale. And and I'm glad again that you bring that up because I don't think I weighed myself at all pretty much during my first pregnancy. And it was so much better for me. But this time around, I don't know what got into me. Maybe curiosity, maybe a little bit of like concern a little bit. Thinking like, what's going to happen since my body is so different now? My habits so different now. But I did go on the scale a couple times and it did freak me out. And it's so sad that it freaked me out so bad because I'm like, what the heck? I have so much like background. Like I understand the whole body positivity, body neutrality thing. Like I've coached people through it. And even myself, I'm getting freaked out by the concept of like gaining too much weight during my pregnancy or like, what am I going to do postpartum? And so girls, just throw the scale away. Just do it.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Because it is so easy to get like so attached to those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Did you ever hear your mom talking about her weight growing up?
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Confusing.
How so? That's a good answer.
There was just a lot of misinformation and miseducation. And I still feel like that, but I do feel like there are starting to be bodies of knowledge that make some sense when it comes to being a woman and how you should be nourishing your body and moving your body and all of these things. And like up until recently, a lot of these like health studies within the fitness industry have been largely done on male populations.
100%.
And like the female body just works differently.
Yeah.
And even like when it comes to nutrition and sugar and stuff, like I feel like in the early 2000s, and again, I was a child, so I don't really know, but based on kind of what I have observed, I would think, and like other bodies of knowledge I've read, is that like in those days, it was like stuff that has fat, like fat makes you fat.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
cholesterol, we don't want cholesterol.
Yeah. Whereas, and there was little to no talk about like sugar being really, really bad for you. Or like processed foods being really bad for you. So like I remember we had like those Nutri-Grain granola bars.
Yeah.
With the jam filling.
Yeah.
And they're so good, but they are so terrible for you. You know, and like empty carbohydrates.
Right.
Like bread and things that aren't like super nutrient dense and whatever.
Depending on the bread.
Depending on the bread, yeah. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like we used to get like the rainbow bread from Co-op.
Okay,
like let's just agree to disagree.
Yes.
That's probably the worst kind of bread you could get.
That's probably not the greatest.
And again, like that was like a treat.
Right.
You know, but like whatever. Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna breathe because I'm just like getting ahead of myself here. And so like I think my mom definitely did the best she knew how with the health information she was given at the time. But like upon doing my own research recently, like when you're constantly spiking your blood sugar, you're constantly mixing up your hormones. Like it's really hard to have like balanced hormones when your blood sugar's spiking, your insulin's all over the place.
Yeah.
And so like back in high school or like junior high, I remember getting like acne, hit puberty, got acne. And I remember my mom saying like, oh, you should like, do you want to go on hormonal birth control? It'll help regulate your acne. And I was like, yeah, sure, cool. Sounds great, you know?
Yeah.
Now I know that that's probably like not, I think there's a time and a place for hormonal birth control. Like if you're like trying not to get pregnant or whatever.
Sure.
I think it really messed up my system.
Yeah. Same here.
You know,
Yeah. I was on it as well.
I'm crazy on that stuff. Like mentally, like not good place.
Oh no.
You know?
And it does take a long time for your body to also come off of it.
Yeah,
Like,
and it didn't fix my acne either.
no, me neither.
So
Yeah.
that was great.
Yeah. So there was a lot of it didn't like set you up for a lifetime of success when it came to like how to treat your body well.
Yeah.
That's
And I also feel too, like just sort of go back to your other question, like I remember my mom like trying to lose weight. But like what she was trying to do was kind of more like more in the realm of like crash dieting.
Yes, same here.
Where it's like, oh, okay, great. We've like lost 10 to 15 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever. Then it's like reverting back to old lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, like toast and eggs for breakfast. But like if you're eating the toast first, you spike your blood sugar right off the hop for the beginning of the day. And then you crash at 2 p.m.
It wasn't even that complex back then.
It wasn't.
It was like you fast for like 3 days straight.
No, I'm saying like that was kind of like the typical breakfast in my household was like toast and eggs.
Gotcha.
And then like the diet was whatever the diet was.
Right.
Half a grapefruit.
That's
Like,
right.
I don't
Exactly.
know.
Cut pretty much everything out.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I remember the same things and feeling very like, you know what's sad actually? Well, first I'm going to ask you, what's the earliest memory that you have of like watching kind of like diet culture go down in your household?
My parents had a book, and it was like a thick book called, I don't know if it was like a bodybuilder guide, whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember like my parents, like they had like a workout station set up in the basement.
Nice.
And they had like a sheet tracker of like they were tracking their measurements
Wow.
throughout this like bodybuilding thing they were doing.
Impressive.
Yeah, and I
So
would have
how old
been.
were you?
We moved out of that house when I was in grade 6, so I would have been earlier than 12 for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's even earlier nowadays. Like obviously with the social media and just everything's so public. I think the earliest age that girls especially start to be aware of like their body image and how they should or shouldn't dress, what they should and shouldn't eat, is like 8 years old.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'd argue even younger because I've worked with girls this age and like
especially in dance and stuff like that. Yeah. Dance and gymnastics are top contenders for like disordered eating, like body dysmorphia, that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's so sad.
Which is where I just get so frustrated because like I said, like I still feel like there's such a lack of education around this kind of stuff.
Around like body image or just like health in general?
Just like health in general. You know, like, I mean, I've been saying since we started this podcast that I'd been like hearing in the sphere because I listen to podcasts in this realm, you know?
Yeah.
About how like as a woman, you're actually not supposed to exercise the exact same way a man is. Like a man can go on like a CrossFit kick for 60 days in a row and he's gonna like get toned up or lose weight or whatever. But if a woman does it, she might not.
Yeah.
Because her hormonal levels, like if you're going Mach 10 on your cycle, it's not like it puts your body in a state of stress and you actually gain weight.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Like I'm not a professional on this, so like please fact check.
It definitely depends.
Please fact check everything I'm saying right now. Like yeah. But I have been like so yeah, since we started this podcast in whatever that was, October, we started recording, I think. November, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember talking to you about this. I was like, I've heard about
before
this thing.
Before
the new year where we can like where you're like supposed to eat as it like pertains to your cycle and your hormones so that like you can regulate your hormones without like crashing all the time or whatever and like exercise accordingly or whatever. And both of us were like, well, that sounds really great, but how do you actually do that? And both of us were like, I don't know.
So I want to go back to what you said at the very beginning, which is like you think that there's a lot of talk around like health and stuff like that. People are focusing a little bit more on like the health stuff. People are like, there's a lot of conversation around it. I think we still need to shift the way that we talk in general about like, because you can talk about like, oh, you know, eating this impacts this, and you know, this is if your hormones like this, this is how you're gonna be feeling, yada yada. But how are we changing the way that we're talking around like specifically young people? Yeah, so that they're not internalizing like literally everything that they're saying about specifically about our bodies, because that's what the episode is about. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I think people will start to learn healthy habits as they go, but we need to address the whole how we perceive our bodies. Yeah. Right? Because when I was younger, I was definitely around the same age, like 10, 11, 12. Yeah, probably around like 10 or 11. When I remember I actually have journal entries of me saying like, I need to get on a diet, and like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to cut out bread. I'm going to start running every day. Like all the things. And it was just because I was, seeing all the, you know, you go through the checkout at the grocery and it's like, lose 10 pounds in 10 days. And here's the latest diet, whatever. Yeah. And thinking that was normal. And it's really sad now to look back and be like, you just had like a regular girl physique, you know, it's just whatever. But the fact that I was so hyper fixated on it and thinking like I had to change is really sad. And so it's definitely got me thinking now with our kids, and this definitely isn't like a female only space. Like men and boys can have a lot of pressure on them as well. So how do we address this with our kids in terms of like, how do we speak about ourselves? And this goes back to, again, some habits with like the body neutrality stuff. Is some things that have impacted me is when, impacted me negatively is when people like cross a mirror or see a picture and they're like, oh my gosh, like I look so fat in that, or I don't like the way my legs look, or I don't, you know, they start picking themselves apart. And so number one thing that we can start doing to protect our younger generation is to not do that. Yeah. Some thoughts are inside thoughts.
Well, and I think, I kind of said this to you yesterday when we were talking about this episode, that I was with someone the other day and she had just kind of gone on a bit of a spiel about very negative things about her body.
Mm-hmm.
And the negative things she was saying was like stuff I could see myself in.
Mm-hmm.
And like she wasn't saying these negative things about me, she was saying them about herself. But in my brain, I'm kind of like, oh, like, is it bad to be that way?
Right.
Like,
oh, my legs look like that, and you're saying you don't want your legs to look like that?
Yeah,
You're starting
exactly.
to absorb it.
Yeah, and I came home and I said to
personalize it.
Mari, I was like, moving forward, I'm going to stop verbally talking out loud about like the things I don't like about myself because it makes me feel like shit and it makes whoever's listening feel like shit.
Yeah. Yep. And we don't realize that other people are also internalizing it and thinking that exactly that, like that comparison game. Just a little like tangent here. I've thought about this a lot too with like for my own personal choices, whether or not I'm going to do any like cosmetic surgeries or anything like that. Like if you do that, that's totally your choice. I haven't made a decision yet on like what or if I want to do anything in the future. I've just thought about it since I'm starting to get older. I'm like approaching 30 and I mentioned it because I was like, what the heck, Josh? I have like this really deep forehead wrinkle all of a sudden. First of all, I'm dehydrated as heck, so it's probably that. But Josh was like, it's because you're getting older. I was like, no, I don't want to get wrinkly and old. But then again, I had to like take a step back and be like, okay, again. So it's not just about like my weight or the way my legs look or yada yada. It's also about like, oh, do I like the way that my face is? You know, these genetic things that I've inherited, or as my body ages, like how am I going to talk about that so that my daughter doesn't think like, oh, but I actually look exactly like you. And so because you don't like the way you look, I inherently am not going to like the way I look.
Right.
And I've thought that, like I've experienced that with my own mom sometimes, and not to throw her under the bus, she recognizes this, but I've called her out on it a couple times. Like, Mom, what the heck? Like you keep making comments about the way your body looks, and we have like very similar body proportions and stuff. Just like, oh no, but you're just like, you're young and fit. I'm like,
but one day I might not be.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, my current or previous lifestyle has changed my body composition to be a certain way. Yeah. But I'm not going to be 22 forever. Yeah. Evidently. Yeah. And I'm not going to have the same composition forever as it's meant to be. Like your body's just meant to fluctuate. And so, yeah, what am I going to think about myself when I'm 40 or 50, you know? But also as an extension of that, like, what do I want to feel when I'm 40 or 50? Like, do I want to feel like I'm just a sack of bones, like waiting to deteriorate? I think I want to
still feel strong
and capable.
And like keep up with your kids and your grandkids. And
that starts with your thoughts, because then your thoughts become your actions. Then your actions become habit. And so, yeah, like if I personally want to focus on like health and fitness and like being active, then that's what I'm going to focus on. Not like, oh, when I'm 40, I want to like fit into this size 4 pair of jeans. Like that's not what it's about. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And so, yeah. There's a lot of weight on moms to not compare ourselves to other moms, but also being mindful of how our kids might be absorbing some things. Yeah, might be saying.
I think. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What do you think are some ways that moms can practice being a little more careful with themselves and with little ears?
Yeah, I think just like shifting the intention away from like how you look and more towards how you feel, and like the focus away from like, oh, I want to be skinny, to like, how am I nourishing my body?
Love that. Yeah.
You know, because I think for me, like when I shift the focus away from there's a difference between like restricting calories and losing weight and then like nourishing your body with proper nutrient. Right. But like, I feel like if you start focusing more on like nourishing your body and putting nutrient into your body and like educating yourself on like what is nutritious versus what is not nutritious, that like
sometimes your body will change.
And you're likely going to feel better and you're likely going to have more energy.
And that's where it's at. You feel better and you have energy. Yeah. That's the biggest game changer right there. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's, I like that you mentioned that exists, that it's like your body could change, but it also might not, but you'll probably feel better. Because that's also a big topic within the body positivity, body neutrality community is like, if you're going forward with like a non-diet approach and you're rejecting the diet mentality, you have to also accept the reality that like, even if you make changes, if your body doesn't change, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's where people often get hung up in the whole, accepting of themselves spectrum, because it's like, well, I spent so long thinking like, oh, but if I implement this habit, if I change this and this, then by virtue of doing those things, I will get leaner, or I'll like the way I look. It's like, actually, you have to be okay with it not being that way, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're implementing certain habits purely for the like the product of it, so like trying to change the way your body looks, trying to accept yourself after things change, you're just going to end up being disappointed, or it's going to be like a lifelong, basically uphill battle of like, oh, I have to keep like lowering my calories. I have to keep exercising more because my body's adapting, and I'm I'm now plateauing, or I'm gaining again, and that's, again, there's probably a time and place for some people where they like want to incorporate that in their lives. Yeah. But I think generally it's a really healthy practice to just be able to try implementing more of a neutral approach and addressing the fact that bodies change, and
I agree.
People recognize it. You can let them recognize it, but you have to come to a place of acceptance and love.
I agree. I also think too, if you are in a place where you don't feel well, that I do think you should try making changes to feel better.
Yeah. But again, it's all about how do you feel?
Yes, exactly.
Right? But it's not, how do I feel because of this weight?
Right.
Right? It's like, how do I feel with my energy? And how do I feel with my sleep and recovery? Like all those sorts of things.
Yeah. Am I sick?
Fertility,
am I having
health,
pain issues, or like gut issues, or like whatever?
Yep.
Like I do think that like those are symptoms of like might want to look into researching different change in lifestyle, change in whatever. And I would also say too, just in terms of like when you're seeking out those resources to help you, I think sometimes we have a what is the word I'm looking for?
Misconception.
Misconception about our family doctors and what they are trained to do.
Oh, yeah.
Like our family doctors are trained to make sure you are not dying. And if you are not dying, they're most of the time like, like if you kind of have like like if you're like, oh, I might just not be sleeping very well at night, they might be like, take melatonin, or like they're actually not super trained in depth into like preventative medicine and like preventative lifestyle things that are like in alignment with that. So I would just recommend researching and like maybe reaching out to like a natural healthcare practitioner, or because
there's so many
niches of like different people you can talk to. So like if you go to your family doc and they're like, yeah, everything checks out, it's fine, like don't be scared to like reach out to some other people as well. I'll just leave that there.
Yes. My last final extension of that comment is also be aware of who is profiting off of your attention. So when it comes to like diet culture and like especially like the fitness industry and stuff, of course there's a lot of well-meaning people, but at the end of the day, we live in a capitalistic society. And so you do have to be mindful of, whose ad is this? Who's being paid to preach this subject, or like, so being very mindful of whose content you're consuming, why they're
putting it out there.
And so, being mindful of the right kind of professionals. And I think that goes for like social media, like who you're following and stuff. There's a lot of really good, like body awareness pages out there and stuff like that. But trying to find people, again, who've done some specific schooling for it, or like, you know, just people who've really niched down in certain areas can be super helpful. And then we'll provide you actual resources, not just kind of like blindly make statements. I think that's a really important thing. Even as an extension to our podcast, like, we are not professionals. The things that we read are just kind of, and what we say are just our opinions, and this is conversation. And so, make sure that when you do follow up or research on your own, that there are actual resources and citations that you can follow up on, because that is huge and that is underutilized a lot of these days.
Yeah, so 100%.
But anyways, that was kind of like the discussion I wanted to have about that today. It's just very prevalent. Yeah. And so anyways, if you guys have any thoughts, do you think it's a controversial subject? Would you prefer to utilize more body positivity in your life, or would you like to utilize more body neutrality? If you need help with where to get started on that, there's lots of good resources online. But of course, reach out to us, because I think there's some people that we follow that are really good resources as well. We'd be happy to plug them. But thanks again so much, you guys, for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time. Bye. Much love.